Hello and welcome to a very special episode of LionWing Talks, your weekly show where we discuss all things LionWing, tabletop games, Japanese games, and localization. I'm your host, Bradley Hailstorm, founder and president of LionWing. This is episode 29 for August 25th, 2021. As I said, this is a very special episode of LionWing Talks. Why is that? Because I've got a co-host today. So if you followed along for the last 29 episodes, you've realized that I've only ever had a co-host one time. And that was Tyler, when I brought Tyler on to talk about the localization process for Embryo Machine. Well, folks, we're doing it again tonight, but this time for Picaresque Roman. And I am joined by Winona, who is the graphic designer on the English adaptation of Picaresque, and also was the graphic designer on Gun and Gun. In fact, if you've been around since last fall or autumn or Q3 of 2020, whatever word you want to put on that time of the year, last year around October, then you probably maybe heard or saw the episode that we did similar to what we're going to do tonight, where we walked folks through what it was like to localize Gun and Gun, which was the battle card game that we brought to Kickstarter last year. Well, we got a really good response to that. We're bringing it back, and this is the first time Winona's been on stream since last fall. Winona, how are you?
It's been good. I actually played Cradia and posted about it on the channels. That was my very first LionWing game, so that was really exciting to see my name there. And then I've just been following along, waiting for Gun and Gun, and starting to work on this project and our future projects too, which I know everyone's been waiting for.
For sure, yeah. So this is, Winona, your second project officially, but you are also working on Midnight Saga, and you will be working on a few other projects in the future. So you will see more of Winona around if you haven't already. And yeah, it's always interesting how Winona and I sort of came together because Winona, you were a backer of Wild Hunt Festival, and then somehow we talked through the Discord, and basically I was like, hey, you want to work on a game together? And that was that. So talk about going from backer to staff member pretty quickly.
Yeah, that was honestly one of the best things that have happened. And since then, I mean, I get to say I'm working in the board game industry, which is a lot of fun. I get to talk to other gamers all the time. And then when Bradley and I aren't only talking about work, we're just talking about board games and anime. So that's really fun too.
Yeah, for sure. And it's good to have Winona on the team because Winona likes Euros. So we've got some Euro representation because I don't talk about Euros a whole lot because I don't play a ton of Euros, although I like Euros, but I just don't play a ton of them, or at least I don't talk about them as it relates to LionWing. But that will be changing because Midnight Saga, would you say, Winona, is decidedly a Euro? Because I would.
Yes. Also, I would just like to point out I will be sleeving all my games. Sleeve, so I can also represent all the sleevers out there.
Yes. Sorry, Winona, I had the audio output capture turned down a little bit, so people were having a hard time catching you, but I have now changed that. And for those who missed it, and it pains me to say this, that Winona just said she's going to be sleeving all the cards from various games that have the LionWing name on it, and that makes me sick. So yuck. But I'm sure Team Sleeve in the chat will very much so appreciate us having some sleeve representation on this stream because Lord knows I'm not representing sleeves at all.
Very weird because Gun and Gun is literally like a card battling game. How can you not sleeve? I don't know.
You know, so we were talking about this before we went on the air. I like to feel cards, and sleeves don't allow you to feel the actual material the card is made out of. I want to feel the material that my card game is made out of. I don't want to feel plastic. Ugh. Sorry. I think I'm the only person representing Team Sleeve. Let's see what's going on in the chat here. I see a Real Beans, one of our community leads, is here, and he says, "Bro, we need to oust this Bradley guy and have Win represent us." Hey, I mean that honestly, you're probably in better hands that way. So I'm actually kind of for that. Hopefully everyone can hear Winona okay now. So I think we should jump into this here in a second. So what we're going to do is Winona has been kind enough to put together a deck of various aspects of what it was like to bring Picaresque Roman to the Western market from the unique standpoint of sort of graphic design and layout. If you've seen anything about the original Japanese version of Picaresque Roman, you know that the game looks very, very different than the game we're presenting. So all the content is the same, but the layout, the graphics, how we designed it, various effects that we put on it, which illustrations we prominently featured and which ones we didn't, all of that is different. And a lot of that is thanks to Winona. Winona, you come from kind of like the layout industry, right?
So in university, I was doing school newspapers. I do a lot of brochure work and things. So it was actually a big change to work on the board games with Bradley for a while. And then when he said we're doing an RPG, I was like, oh, well then, this is going to be my wheelhouse. Like I didn't really let Bradley have an idea of what we were going to do. He sent me the text and I was like, this is what it's going to look like. And we pretty much rolled with it because yeah, it really is my specialty and what I really love doing. So hopefully there's more RPGs in the future.
Yeah, and not just a heap praise on you, Winona, but like this was really the perfect. I felt like this was the perfect project for you because I knew what your background was in. So it's like I like there wasn't even a second thought about another person to work on this project other than you. It just made sense. I was glad that you were willing to take on this project, and I think it shows, folks. I mean, I've said this before that the localization work that we've done on Picaresque Roman, I think, is our strongest and most sophisticated localization work that we've done. And you know, localization doesn't just look at words, right? It's the whole package. It's how it's presented visually, also with the prose. But all of that, I think we've got our most robust project thus far. And really, Winona, you're pretty much to thank for that because this book is beautiful, really beautiful. Let's without any further ado, let's jump into this. I'm going to grab my physical book up over here because I'm probably going to show some stuff as we go through it. I'm sure you've got some stuff as well to show in your deck presentation. Let me transition over to that real quick, and let's get going.
Okay. Real Beans, I actually do have office decorations. It's just that I face them, and so you guys can't see them. So actually, the first slide is really just the book. I just wanted to kind of show the Japanese cover. Hopefully, everyone recognizes the art on the cover. That's all over the Kickstarter page. That's literally what we're using as the cover, except for, of course, the logo. But yeah, Picaresque Roman is in a whole bunch of different versions in Japan. It's pretty popular. Bradley's probably more adept to talk about this than I am, but just for those who don't know, yeah, it's a small indie RPG, but I actually don't know why Bradley decided to pick this over, other than that it's one of his favorites, is what I know.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. So it's in its 5th edition in Japan, and yet they've never changed the cover art. Sometimes you see that with really any game, but especially with RPGs, that with each edition they create new cover art. You know, to indicate like, hey, this is a new thing. We've got more stuff in here than we had in the last edition. But that wasn't the case here, and I'm actually really happy about that because I can't think of a stronger piece of art to go along with just the vibe of Picaresque than dude smoking that cigarette. I mean, if I could amount to being half as cool as this dude in life, I feel like I'd probably have it made. My wife would probably like me a lot more too, but I'm not half as cool as that guy, and my wife probably doesn't like me as much because of it. But it's very cool art that they didn't change, and I think it was right of them to not change that. So yeah, I chose this game because yes, I like it, but because there's nothing else like it on the market. Now, you can certainly draw some comparisons to other games that might use similar mechanics, but I don't think any other game sort of combines everything together that is Picaresque in the same way that Picaresque does. And so it creates this really unique experience that I can pretty confidently say, like, you're not really going to get the experience of Picaresque anywhere else. And when I'm looking for games to market, that's a pretty easy marketing point, right? And it's a pretty hookish marketing point when you can say, like, you're never going to play this game other than if you play this game. So, yeah, very cool cover though. And we did not keep that. We did not keep that logo at all.
No. We'll be going over some of the logos in a bit. But first, one of the first things that we usually do with any localization project, and with all the other ones as well that Bradley and I have worked on together, is mostly Bradley finds a bunch of sources that he likes the look of or the feel of. And these were just some of the images that he had sent me. And it helps me visualize what he's imagining for the project, and kind of for us to be on the same page about what we're going to bring to the market this time. So a lot of the kind of like the splatter effects, the grunginess, and then also just kind of like the thick, punchy letters. That was definitely some of the ideas we were trying to get across. And then Persona, I'm sure a lot of you, a bunch of people have already mentioned. Persona was a huge influence on the design sense. Just especially even just the colors are, of course, exactly matching the book. And then just kind of like the way that they, tilt things and add strokes to things. We really wanted to get that feeling across. And kind of that same vibe too. The you could be a thief, you're sneaking around, but at the same time, the world is really vibrant and really fun.
Yeah, if you go back to the previous slide where you talk about logos. So I think, Winona, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the first thing that we always talk about, and therefore I send you, are logo references. To me, it
Yes.
makes sense to start with that, because not only is it nice to have a logo before you have anything else, because it sets the tone for the rest of the project, and it sets the tone for your game. So of course you want to, in many ways, work the hardest on the logo, because that's going to tell so many folks about what they can expect from your game, which is wild to think that just how you present some text on the front of a box or a book can help someone understand your game, but it totally can. Not only is it all of that, but it's also one of my favorite parts of the localization process. Is I love finding logo references. This, I would say, like when I think about Midnight Saga and our previous project, or our upcoming project, depending on how you look at it, if you've been following along with its development timeline, when I compare that project to the logo design of Picaresque, it was really kind of like night and day. We went through so many revisions with Midnight Saga, and that's a tale for another day. We've got lots to talk about regarding that logo. This logo, though, I was very clear, like from go, what I wanted. These were my first 5 references, and these, I think, were my only 5 references. So I very much had like a clear understanding of like, here's what I want, here's what I want it to look like. Let's combine a lot of these things and put it into one. And I actually think, Winona, I think you nailed it. The only thing that you don't really see in the Picaresque Roman logo from these references here, sorry, my screen is over here, my camera's here, that's why I'm looking this way. The only logo that you don't really see us have the only thing we didn't really take inspiration from, I would actually say Train to Busan. I don't think that is really seen in what we went with, but all the other ones, certainly you can see the influence on what we landed on.
I think just to speak, even with Gun and Gun, we went back and forth a long time just to try to find that perfect balance. But really, this game, we kind of had an idea, and once we put it down on paper, we didn't actually change the concept that much. So obviously, there were some tweaking, and we'll look at those later in the deck. But that we really, the concept, as soon as you see the first logo, you'll see that, oh, we pretty much kept that same idea throughout.
Yeah, and I was doing an interview for Tech Raptor, a written interview. It's featured on the campaign page. One of the questions, I don't remember what they asked, but ultimately I was talking about the game's sense of identity. And the game, when we went into it and we started kind of planning out our design doc of like what we're going to do with this, how we're going to localize it, what elements we're going to keep, what elements we're going to maybe not emphasize as much, and then what we're going to add to it for the English release, it was really easy to do all of that because the game has such a strong sense of identity that's felt throughout the entire book. So for us, and maybe I'm speaking for you, Winona, but for me, it was always really easy to understand what type of game this was. Whereas other games, that we've worked on and are currently work on, it's a little harder to like find its sense of identity. It has it, absolutely. It's just not as bold. Whereas Picaresque Roman's identity, like it wears its identity on its sleeve. Everyone can see it. It's bold as hell. And that, I think, from like our standpoint, makes it really easy to work with and sort of riff off of because you know exactly how the game is presenting itself. So then therefore you know how to present it when you're trying to make that adaptation to English.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that part of that is simply because it's an RPG and it gives us that ability to actually step in the characters. And when I go through the rule book and like read through the characters' descriptions, I can see myself as a character, which makes it, of course, easier to design for that world.
For sure. And I would say out of all these logos, like if I had to say, oh, this was the one that I wanted us to get the closest to, it's that Persona 2 logo. I'm on
Yeah.
record of saying that Persona 2 is my favorite Persona. Fight me. But I just love its logo. We even tried to incorporate the kanji that is next to the Persona 2 Innocent Sin words. And we had a couple iterations where we had some kanji that were involved. We ultimately decided not to go that route. Winona, I don't even remember why we decided to pull that, but we did retain it for the Rogue edition of the book, the leatherette, because we do have that big kanji right in the center of the book, which was a throwback to the Persona 2 logo, but also there was a little bit of Ghost in the Shell in going with that approach to the front cover of the Rogue edition.
Yeah. Speaking of, we might as well show off the logos
Yeah.
with the kanji. So obviously on the far left is the original Japanese logo. When I work on the logos, I always keep the original somewhere, even if we're not like taking it and re-implementing it like exactly, just because it helps us keep in mind like where we're coming from. In the end, we still want to pay respect. We still want to pay homage to the original logo and design, even if we're not using anything from it. So that's always an important part of the design process. And the logos are all tilted vertically because originally we actually were thinking of doing a vertical logo for the longest time. And so this is actually how we were designing it. There were a couple of iterations, but as you can see, it still pretty much looks like the logo that we're going to end up with. The very first image on the left, that was one of our final ones before we tweaked it. And the only difference with that really was that there was a bullet instead of the eye. I don't actually remember why we decided not to go with the bullet. But
I kind of remember this conversation because I think I said this, maybe you said it, but I think I said it like, that looks kind of cheap, like it looked like a bad logo that
right,
you might see at like, I don't know, some generic off brand at like Walmart. And I was like, like it's thematic, but is it good? And I think I decided it was indeed thematic, but indeed not so good.
Yes, actually, that is right. That is definitely what we said. But yeah, the logo, like even the fonts, we basically kept it the same as soon as we had decided what feel we were going for. Unlike the other projects where we literally went through, like Bradley and I would download like 50 fonts each and just trying the words of the logo in all these different fonts to figure out what feel we wanted to go. Picaresque, we really kind of just went with it and didn't change it once we got settled on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Made Night Saga's logo, I'm not kidding. I think we may have been like up into like the 30 iterations, maybe like closer to 40 iterations of that logo. That logo was really hard to land on. This one, honestly, Winona, you presented this to me and like the fonts were perfect. Like, and I don't even really think you presented me with anything other than these fonts. So like you nailed the logo right away. It was just about like, all right, so we've got our fonts. Now how do we arrange this in the best way possible? And we ultimately decided vertical was not presenting this in the best way possible.
So obviously this is our final logo that we're using now. We use all over the Kickstarter. And I like it. it ended up being pretty much exactly what I had imagined. And yeah, I don't really have much more to say about this because we were really set on what it was going to look like in the first place. So
Yeah, I would say in localization, it's always this balancing of it, this balancing act of like, how do you present the product for your new audience in a way that the new audience is going to best receive it, and at the same time pay respects to the source material, kind of like what you're saying before, Winona. And although this logo is drastically different from the original Japanese logo, in fact, I think this is the I think this is the furthest we've gotten away from like the core logo. Although Midnight Saga is pretty different too,
it's
actually.
pretty, yeah.
Very different. But I still think that this retains the essence of the game, and at the end of the day, like, it's more important that you retain the essence of the game in your adapted logo than the essence of the original logo, you know? And so I think we made the right call here, and I absolutely love this logo. I also love that we get to present it in red for the leatherette version, the Rogue edition, because my favorite version is this version that we're looking at right here. Black background, white lettering. That's my favorite. But seeing it in that stark red is just really cool.
Yeah, and someone mentioned it has the white box from the original logo. That's a really good eye. It does have the white box. So, and you can see we actually did try without the white box to emphasize the kanji, but in the end, it was really to pay respects to the original, and we definitely had the original in mind when we were making our final decision. But yeah, that's the logo. This was a really simple logo for us to work through. Even talking about it is really simple because we knew what we were doing. Moving on to the actual book, of course. So this is a copy of the Japanese book. I guess this is kind of spoilers if you can read Japanese. I can't, so not spoilers for me. But yeah, this is what the book looks like in its 5th edition, I believe. You can see there's different. There's obviously a very different style to the book. It's a lot more, I would say, graphic heavy. It's a lot more black and white, and then we also have like different character art and a lot of thick black boxes, I guess is the way I would explain it. And then I'm going to compare these pages to what we ended up with. So these will come back, don't worry. Yeah, so with this project in particular, because Bradley knew that this was kind of my specialty and kind of what I work in, the picture on the left was actually, I think it must have been like 10 minutes after like I got the text. I threw it in a document, and I was like, hey, Bradley, I was thinking of laying it out like this with the sidebars. In the original, you can see there are the really dark black colored sidebars, and we do use that again in the English version. But I just wanted to show him what I was imagining for the layout. We also were playing around a lot with the titles in the beginning. You can see how that really looks a lot like the Persona look we were going for. And in the end, it kind of felt a little too messy, I think, and a little just not the right vibe, I guess. A lot of Picaresque, we wanted that kind of cool, jazzy, kind of like understated coolness. And this looked really fun and really Persona, but it didn't get the right vibe across.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the top left one, very first, just like quick and dirty, like, hey, here's kind of what we're thinking. Iteration in the bottom right, but as we wanted to retain that like Persona 5 look, right? But we decided not only was it messy to do it this way, but it was probably emphasizing the wrong parts of Picaresque, because Persona absolutely is in that inspiration wheelhouse of Picaresque Roman, but it's not the main inspiration for the game. In fact, the main inspiration for the game is Yakuza. It's not Persona, actually. So I felt like if we went with like this really kind of off kilter lettering, yeah, sure, it might have looked cool, but it probably wasn't true to what the game was trying to get across. So really, the essence of the game is Yeah, it's taking place in the city, which is this scummy underworld, right? Where just scoundrels and villainy run roughshod over everything and everyone. But there's like a cleanness to it. Yes, the actions that rogues take within the city it's those actions are very scattershot, but like the city itself, although lawless, has order to it. And so for me, it was like, well, this looks cool and it pays respect to Persona, but A, Persona isn't the main inspiration, and B, I'm not sure this touches on like what the core of the game actually is and what the core of the game actually means. And so that's when we decided, all right, let's try another revision. And I think that's what's on the next page.
Yeah, so this on the page is actually the what we ended up going with. There was a couple of different versions. I actually didn't pull them up. Where we actually tried the off tilt the tilted lettering with this black bar. We made the black bar text really big, the first letter, things like that. But we ended up going back to just something that just looked really clean. On the left there is the Japanese page that we are recreating on the in our version. And one of the big things I kind of said to Bradley when I was redoing the design was that I didn't want like the grungy black all over the design. I just felt that it made it look too busy. It looked a little bit kind of older design feel, like something that wouldn't read so well in the Western context. Just because for most of us and for any RPG books that I've read nowadays, everything is very much cleaner and there are background elements. There's the bullet hole in the bottom right, and there's the crosshairs, but even those are very understated and they're not kind of in your face, which I think was a big part of what we decided to go with for the design for the whole book.
Yeah, so I have a soft spot in my heart for the original Japanese book. Of course I do. I chose this game for a reason, and part of it was how it was presented visually. And at the same time, it's undeniable that the game is very busy. I think too busy for a reader. There's a whole lot of elements going on. There's a whole lot of like disparate parts that just felt like all of its graphic design elements were competing for your attention. When for me, my favorite RPG books are the clean ones where it's got this nice window dressing, but like the focus is always the text, not the extraneous design elements that really actually don't mean anything at the end of the day. That what you need from the game is the text, right? And so it was like, all right, how do we pick elements and how do we like find what makes this game look the way it looks? Grab those elements and be very tactical with our implementation of them, which ones we choose and how we emphasize those things. And that's where we get the crosshair. That's where we get you can't see it right now because the LionWing Talks logo is over it, but in the bottom right of most pages is kind of like that bullet hole shatter effect going on. And so I think Winona really nailed it of like, all right, let's grab a couple things that make the Japanese book look the way that it looks. And also let's not pull the reader's attention in 10 different directions. Let's give them something that looks clean, but is also, highly artistic and has value to it in that regard, without forgetting that at the end of the day, we got to read this thing. And let's make the emphasis our text. As you can see, we did change the header image. So the header image that you see in the original Japanese book is not used in our book. We went with something else that was designed by Group SGR. And by the way, everything that's presented in our book was ultimately okayed by Group SGR. So although you can see there are clear differences in how the book's presented, ultimately, Seagray, the game's designer, and really he's the core of SGR, he was the one to say yay or nay on what we presented to him. So we've got the designer's stamp of approval, despite it being pretty different. I was a little salty, Winona, that we can never figure out a way to keep those handguns. I loved those handguns. I don't know why. Like it kind of goes back to that use of the bullet in one of our earlier logos. Like it's kind of cheap, but I sort of love it.
It's funny because when Bradley first sent me the very, very first draft of the Kickstarter page, those handguns were everywhere. And I was like, Bradley, we're not going to use these. And I took them all out.
I created for Picaresque. I've had the Picaresque Kickstarter page done. Well, like the bones of it were in, it's been in place for like a year and a half or so. So when I handed things over to Winona, like, all right, do your thing, it had all my old work in it. And I was just like, I'm not a graphic designer. I'm terrible at these things. So I had like all of these just really terrible graphics that I had either created or lifted from the game and tried to shoehorn into the campaign. It was terrible looking. And then Winona was like, I mean, you didn't say this, Winona, but you essentially were like, sit down. Sit down,
well,
boy.
I mean, when I sent you my design, there was no more guns. Let's just say that.
There were no more guns. That's right.
Yeah, and actually one thing you pointed out that was that's actually really important in the localization project or localization process is that we do talk to the original designers and we do take their opinion very seriously and into consideration when we're making these changes. Even with the logos, we always run it past them. And there is that interesting piece where because they're in Japan, like we'll be working on something all day and then we go to bed and we're like, okay, well, hopefully in the morning we'll get news from them about whether they're like yay or nay. And the design process is definitely different working with people overseas, but it is fully approved by them, and we do work with them throughout the whole project.
Well, not only are design sensibilities sometimes different depending on one's culture, but just as you said, like we'd work on something all day, and then because we had no input from the designers, we just went ahead and like did the whole iterative process. We came to a conclusion like, all right, here's our thing. Here's all the work we've done over the past 6 to 8 hours. We send it off. And the worst situation, and this didn't really happen with with this project, but it certainly has happened on others. You put in all this work, you wake up the next day, and the designer's like, yeah, no, none of that's good. And you're like, oh, okay, there just went our whole day. It would have been great had we been able to talk to you at 10 a.m. When we were on iteration 1 to get direction. But instead, we worked from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And now all that work is for nothing. That feels real bad, man.
Yeah. One of the things we did keep here is the persona vibe still. We kept it for the headers. There are a few headers in the book, so we felt that it was enough to kind of keep that homage, but also focus more on the picaresque. And I actually really love the way that ended up. It pulls attention at the right time and otherwise gives the attention to the text, which is really what needs to have the attention.
Yeah, I think we blended the styles really well. I mean, not to toot our own horn, but I do think that we found a nice marriage of those two styles. It actually reminded me of Persona 5 in reverse, where like the Persona 5 logo, if you look at it, it's like that italicized text. It's all very close together. But then the rest of the game, you don't see that kind of presentation and text anywhere. It's all that tilted off kilter text that you see here in our header here. We took the opposite approach of where like the off kilter text is used very sparingly, sort of like the P5 logo, but then the rest of the game is very clean, not off kilter text. So really it's like Persona 5 in reverse for us.
Persona 5 is actually the only Persona I've played, and it was during the exact same time we were working on this book. So it actually worked out perfectly.
I did not know that. I didn't know that you're I didn't know that's the only Persona you play, but I didn't know you were playing at the same time we were working on this.
Yeah, it was actually just a weird coincidence. We picked it up on sale and I was like, oh, I guess this game is going to be inspired by that.
Were you playing vanilla or royal?
Royal. We picked up the royal cup.
Nice.
We did a lot of research and everyone said no, play royal.
Yeah, that's the way to go.
So on this one, you can see definitely we have new character arc, and we really changed up the character pages a lot. The way that the charts were, I just personally didn't feel that we needed the giant black boxes, and I wanted to also fit in more text. One of the big differences moving from Japanese to English is that the Japanese text physically takes up a lot less space. I talked about this in our Gun and Gun video as well, way back. But that is one of the biggest pieces that changes. Even there are things like their titles. You can see the header title of that chart is pretty short, but for ours, like it just Latin characters span so much more space. It just takes up a lot more space. So that is one of the reasons why the localization process can be difficult. It's just the amount of space we need to explain the same ideas is totally different. Other parts in the book where this came in effect was the sidebar, because sometimes the Japanese book would have a ton of information in the sidebar, and in the English version, the sidebar would end up being longer than the main text. And so for some of those situations, we actually moved the sidebar text into the main area just because it wouldn't fit otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. And so if we look at that Japanese version, which actually I think is from the 4th edition, because the 5th edition does look a little different. But what's interesting about 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st edition is clearly the art's very different. So I actually can't remember if Takuma-san did the illustrations for editions 1 through 4, but certainly, there's the art in the 5th edition, and then in our 1st edition is pretty next level. I mean, not only next level compared to what it was, but just like take away the juxtaposition. This art is just, I've talked many times before that sometimes I will just play, or in the case of LionWing, I will choose a game based on art and then look at the mechanics as sort of secondary. That's part of what drew me to Picaresque Roman. And this was even with the old art where I was like, gosh, that's really good looking. But this new art is like, I mean, saying God tier is probably going to sound like hyperbole, but like this is an art style that really speaks to me.
Yeah, I actually don't know why we changed art styles. It was just something that you told me, like, oh, we're using this art, and I just kind of went with it. But yeah, I don't know. I like both art styles, really.
Yeah, so what's interesting is Picaresque Roman Group SGR ran a crowdfunding campaign. I think it was a campfire campaign specifically for the 5th edition of the game, and that's where they began to incorporate more of the art that you see in our book. Though, if memory serves, I think they still retained some of the art from the previous editions. But we also feature art in this book that is not in the Japanese version at all, art that we commissioned for the English release.
I was just about to say that. So really, if you want to see all the art, you're going to have to pick up every version, Japanese and English.
That's right. You can find at least the 4th edition on Amazon Japan. Japanese edition looks like a TCG style, says Rogue. Maybe. I don't know if I'm seeing that, but it's definitely different.
I think his hair looks better in the Japanese version.
You think it looks better?
His hair?
His hair?
I like, yeah.
Oh,
he looks
it's so fluffy though in our version. Like, look at that fluff. Like that's like perfect floofiness. I want to touch it. Yeah, right. I also like what you did with the boxes. Not utilizing black boxes in the way that they did. It works for their edition completely, but it would not have worked for us. So putting that gray, sort of like gradient background behind the skill names and the skill descriptions is like chef's kiss good.
I just noticed an error, but anyways, I'm gonna pretend I don't see it.
Write it down.
Yeah, I will. The other thing with, I guess, the biggest difference between there is what we see in our English version is much more well known in Western culture. Like, we read a lot of tables where the header and the text is connected, which is not in the Japanese version. So I mean, some of that is because we are in a Western context. That's how I design and how I learned to design. So I think that is some of the things that we do think about when we make things in English and bring it to you guys and girls.
I like this short conversation we got going on in the chat where Av says, yeah, but when you fight, you don't need the fluff. But then our translator, who's in the chat right now, Noelle is in the chat. She was the translator on Picaresque Roman says, that's when you need the fluff the most, actually. Got to look cool during a fight. And I wholeheartedly agree, Noel. Maximum fluffage.
And then this is the character sheets. This was also something that actually took a little bit more time for us to work out the kinks. Partially because the Japanese text just takes up way less space. I know I already mentioned this, but this is like one of the biggest things. Like, if you just look at the top, the word notoriety is, whatever, 10 letters long, but in the Japanese version, it's literally 2 characters. So a lot of times when we translate things over, things just take up way more space. And then one of the big things we changed too was to move the turn order track vertically. The funniest thing was when I had done that, Bradley sent me a message saying, "Oh, you missed the turn order track," and I was like, "No, it's vertical now. You just have to look a little bit over." And that was just honestly because of the space. I wanted to give the players a lot more space for the bottom half of the character sheet. I just felt like the amount that was given in the Japanese version was just too little. So by blowing all of that up, it meant that the turn order could no longer fit where it used to fit, which is just that horizontal piece. Actually, I think I can show it from us. This right here is now vertical and in a black box to kind of just separate it visually. And we also keep, the highlighted black text like throughout the game. And this is a page that everyone's going to be using and writing on. We also worked a lot on the colors of this page, weirdly enough. At first, we did have a lot darker character sheet. We had the bullet holes. We had the what is it called? The gun. The gun
crosshair?
Circles. Mm-hmm. Crosshair. Thank you.
The gun circles.
The crosshairs in the background. And we just couldn't, we were having a hard time finding a balance of decorating it enough, but also making sure it was clean so that people could actually like write in it and use the piece of paper. And ultimately, we scrapped all the decor and we were like, you know what? No, people need to write on this. If people want to photocopy it, if people want to use it, they just need it to be clean and easy to read. And so we ended up going with that, which is why there are no extra fluff around, I guess.
Yeah, I think we spent probably more time on this character sheet than we did like the rest of the layout look. There were a lot of iterations of this, some very, very busy and then others very minimal. And I think we struck a nice balance between both of those things. I do spot a couple layers in this. We'll need to update this one. But by and large, like this, I think we both were, once you submitted this, like, hey, what about this? I think we both were like, oh yeah, this is the one. This is the one.
We didn't mention this at the beginning, but everything we show today is in draft form. Don't screenshot these and be like, oh, there's this error. We still need to go through everything.
Yeah, look at this company. They don't know what they're doing. Yes, everything is still a work in progress until it arrives in your inbox or your mailbox.
Correct. But yeah, that was that. Oh, I guess another thing we actually had at the beginning was the Picaresque Roman logo really large. I know someone commented there that they like that the logo is really small and kind of clean in the corner. That was, again, we had gone through a ton of iterations where it was big and large, front and center. But in the end, we needed the space for players to be able to write things. And we were like, well, you're playing this game. I think we should keep the logo, but I don't think we need it as prominent as it was.
Yeah, for sure. I'm seeing if there's anything in the book. Oh, you've got some more. All right, I'll hold off.
Oh, I also didn't know. I pressed it to see if I had more. And then this, of course, is the Kickstarter page. Hopefully everyone has poured their eyes over it already. We spent a long time on this Kickstarter page as well. And a lot of it was pulling pieces from the Persona, from the Yakuza games, and just kind of the overall look of everything we had worked on. with the design process actually this time, we did the logo first, followed by, we did, I think, like maybe 5 pages of the book. And then once we had that feel and that look down, we're like, okay, we can move to the Kickstarter. Especially because we knew that for the Kickstarter, we weren't going to preview the whole book for everyone, unfortunately. So once we had the feel of the book, we're like, okay, we can do a Kickstarter based on this book. And then as soon as we're done the Kickstarter page, go back to the book and finish the rest of that. So a lot of this was a work in progress. A lot of this was worked on before the rest of the book was finished, which was interesting too. And even though the Kickstarter gives us the ability to use a lot more color and a lot more kind of decorative pieces, we actually kept it mostly black and white, with, of course, all the red splatters of blood. Or maybe it's not blood, I don't know, grape juice or something. And then
Grape
just
juice. Get out of here.
and then just really focusing on like the covers. Oh, I should have showed off the Rogue Edition here, but showing off the covers of the books and the box art and things like that. We just because in the end the Kickstarter is to represent the book, and when you open the book is black and white, and so it didn't make sense for us to make a really colorful and like gun-filled, blood splatter-filled Kickstarter page.
Yeah, I mean, we've never overtly talked about this, but I think we're on the same page that we tend to view, or at least I do, I won't speak for you, Winona, but I tend to view a Kickstarter page as an extension of the actual game itself. And so it would have been weird to present the Kickstarter in full color where the rest of the book is not. So we really went for a look that kind of looked like, hey, if you just opened up any page in the book, like you would find something that looked like the Kickstarter page. And I really, really liked that we were able to feature the female Yakuza character here. That is my favorite piece of art out of any game that we have localized. I think it's the coolest piece of art in the entire game. So it was great to be able to feature that so prominently in the Kickstarter, because it doesn't get featured as prominently, to my sadness and heartache. It doesn't get featured as prominently in the book, though it is featured in the book. So to be able to show it
like a full page.
Does it?
I think you made me swap something so that it could have a full page.
Maybe I did. I just remember at one point it wasn't heavily represented, and it broke my heart a little bit. So it was cool to be able to feature that in the campaign page.
And it's actually funny that you said that you want to look at the Kickstarter as an extension of the game, because we actually have never said that to each other. And yet when I show you any designs from any of the Kickstarters we've worked on, it's always looked like it's from the game. Like, we definitely never said, oh, this Kickstarter page should be black and white. But whenever we were doing the like design iterations and things like that, was never even a question for one of us to be like, oh, maybe we should add some color, because it's something that was, I guess, unspoken, but we both really understood about Kickstarter pages.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I guess we never have actually had that conversation, but I guess that speaks to having decent instincts and knowing what the other person is also thinking. Because we definitely have been on the same page in that. We were just looking at the Made Knight Saga campaign page before we went live here, and that also retains the visual presentation of that game very well. I have said this before, and I know Sai gives me shit for it because he's always talking about how I'm so big on superlatives, but I do think that this is our best looking Kickstarter. Like, not even by a wide margin. I think this is our best presented Kickstarter. Certainly our most stylish.
You're gonna say that again once we present Made Knight.
Well, yeah, I like to say that about every project because because I really believe it. In many ways, I have to believe it. I've said before.
That's true. You never want to present the next Kickstarter to be worse than your previous game.
Yeah, well, and you never want to present your Kickstarter as worse than the last one.
Yeah,
the last one. So like, it has to be true in many regards, but it's objectively true, I think, for Picaresque.
This was such a sleek Kickstarter and so much fun to work on. I think sleek is just a really good word. Every time we would do something, it would be like, does this look cool? Is this cool enough for what we're going for?
Yeah, we did come back to like, is this cool looking?
Yeah. Which is why the handguns are not there.
Oh,
They're not cool looking.
But the gun circles are, huh?
Yeah. I don't think we used the gun circles anywhere on the Kickstarter
We
page.
didn't. Kind of a missed opportunity. But it
Yeah.
really, when you look at the Kickstarter, I don't know where we would have fit it in. You know, everything that needs to be on the Kickstarter is already there. So I guess we just decided it wasn't needed.
Cool. I think this might be it for my slides. So if you want to show off anything from your book or anything, or if anyone has questions too, we are more than happy to answer them. I did see a question about the dice, which I didn't show off here. But if Bradley actually holds up the back of the book there to the camera. So those red lines, Bradley kept on sending these to me and saying, can we work these in the design somewhere? Can we do this in the dice? Can we do this? Can we do this on the Kickstarter page or the book or something? And we really did try to like put them throughout somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, we didn't go with that design for the dice because I liked the other design for the dice more, which is what we ended up with.
Yeah, I wish we could have shown off that version of the dice, because we did have a version of the dice that did feature these lines here. We did end up using this design though for the scenario booklet, except we inverted the colors. Well, actually, no, we didn't invert the colors because we didn't use black on the scenario booklet, but the scenario booklet is red and the lines like this are white. And I actually think that is way cooler looking than the black and red, despite the fact that I love the black and red. So we were able to retain that quite a bit. So I wanted to show off something here. If you know anything about Japanese tabletop RPGs, you know that they're big into replays. And replays are pretty much in the back of every Japanese TRPG. And it's a way to understand the game, its mechanics, and the game flow. In fact, I think Western RPGs should adapt this as well because...
But wait, Bradley, what's a replay?
Yes. So a replay is a transcription of a live play session, usually with the designers or a playtest team or friends of the designers. And it's a word for word transcription of a group of folks playing the game. It's a great way to learn the game, if you don't want to actually read the rules. So like for me, I always go to a replay before the rest of the rules in a Japanese TRPG. That's just how I like to do things. But even if you've already read the rules, the replay is super, I think, integral to the process of like really getting your questions answered. Because if you're like me, you read through the rules of a TRPG and you're like, oh my God, I have all the questions. The replay is a great opportunity for those questions, or at least a lot of them, or at minimum, some of them, to be answered. And so the replay for Picaresque Roman, regardless of the edition...
Rogue actually says, can you please go back to the big camera, boss man? So that they can see the replay.
I certainly can. One moment.
I'm watching you chat. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Team sleeves.
Winona's got you. All right. Let's, there we go. All right. So here starts our replay. So regardless of the edition of the replay, they used the same art for all of the editions, and it was illustrated by an artist who is not Takuma-san. So it was really important for me for the English edition. I'll show off more of this art here in a second. It was really important for me for the English edition for all of the art to look consistent. I wanted there to be cohesion in the visual presentation of this game, from its layout to its art. And so I did not like the idea of having multiple artists featured throughout the book, not because I didn't want to feature multiple artists on principle, but because I wanted the book to feel like it was all one piece. And for me, even like when I read through like a D&D book, obviously they use a multitude of artists, and I personally hate it. It's just like not my thing. I'm like, hey, that art's really good and that art's like not very good at all. I don't like that. It pulls me out of the experience. I like everything to look like it's a single cohesive narrative. And so I went to Seagray and I said, hey, so what do you think about the idea of re-illustrating all of the replay and having Takuma-san do it? And he was like, cool, pay me and we'll make it happen. I said, okay, that's fine. So you won't really see any of this art in the English edition. So I'll show off some of it here. I mean, it's good art. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's fine. But Takuma-san is sort of on like another level. So like, it's cool art. Absolutely. But it doesn't go along with the rest of the art in the English edition. And so that really bothered me. Here's another piece of art. In fact, I just received some of the last concept sketches for the replay art that is not fully finished yet today. Actually, the last 4 pieces I got the concept art for. So this comes at a good time. So just a little bit more art here to show off. Again, it's super cool. Rogue asks in the chat, is this the 4th edition? Yes, it is. The 5th edition is harder to get your hands on because it was, from my understanding, made to order. And so only those who backed the project for the 5th edition Campfire crowdfunding campaign got the 5th edition. So you can't really find the 5th edition out anywhere. Like, if you go to Amazon Japan, what's available is not the 5th edition of the book. Seeing here if there's anything else. Here's the last bit of art, which actually I really love.
That's actually a piece of art of Bradley's back.
That is. I actually sent them.
Spoilers.
Spoiler, this is what's beneath this shirt. I sent a picture of my bare back to him and said, hey, make sure you get this rad Yakuza tat that I got. So yeah, the replay art style is a bit more comic-y, right? I mean, thick stroke lines, less grounded in like the character features. And I just didn't want that for the English edition. So now you get something new. Af says, I knew Bradley was hiding something. Yes. I mean, I'd never get a chance to take off my shirt, but if I did, you see that big old tiger on my back. So, yeah, so I think that takes us to the end of our localization presentation. I did want to take some time to answer some questions that we got in the Discord. So, let's see here. We got some questions submitted. And normally, I would do this on a regular LionWing Talks episode where I would go through and I would answer some community questions. Hopefully my Discord is not showing up on the screen right now other than my video. So let's see here. Winona, you going to stick around for this?
I'll stick around for my 1 question, or 2 questions technically.
Okay. Also, we need to reveal the next stretch goal because we are way past.
Oh, yes. I blame Bradley for not sending me the stretch goal information.
Yeah, no. So that was my, that was my bad. For anyone who's been watching these things, you know that I'm moving this week. So I'm doing all of this in the midst of, we just sold our house. So I'm packing up this house. We're moving to another house. So it's been like proper chaos around here. So too much going on. That means some things have fallen through the crack. Let's get to some questions. First question from Sai. Oh, this is for you, Win. All right. As a Euro game fan, are there more products after Made Knight Saga I can look forward to? To give you an out, I'm on board with the usual LionWing games, so even if there are no Euro games, I'll still follow the releases.
So I don't know. Bradley, are there more Euro games? I'm really looking forward to some.
Not immediately. There is something that I'm working on that'll probably be a GameFound crowdfunding campaign.
Excellent.
Or maybe a game on tabletop campaign, but probably GameFound. And it's pretty Euro. But that's not, none of that is confirmed. None of that is like set in stone.
So to answer your question, I don't know personally, but I will continue to push Bradley to publish more Euro games. Every time I see a cool Japanese game, I send it to Bradley and I'm like, hey, do you know these people? I want to play this game in English. Can you work your magic so I can work on it so that we can all play it and enjoy it?
What did you recently sent me something, and because it wasn't like in my normal wheelhouse, I had never heard of it, and then like looked into it, and I think I even said to you like, I kind of want this game. I can't
Yeah.
remember what it was though.
I don't want to spoil it for the group just in case. I'll send
right.
you a message after.
That's fair.
The second question for me there is any thoughts on linen finish and card sleeves? So I actually don't care about linen because I sleeve everything.
You had me going, and then you let me down. Oh, I must have lost connection here, but we're still going for the VOD. So if you're watching on YouTube, then nothing went down for you. I'll just say that I'm very disappointed in Winona, and she can't defend herself right now because she's not here because I'm apparently currently offline. So the stream is not even going. So Winona, if you're watching this on playback with the rest of the folks on YouTube, you can't defend
I don't know
yourself.
if I'm just talking. Oh, there we go. There we go. You're back. I lost you. Cards.
I lost you, and I was taking the opportunity to berate you for liking sleeves, and I knew you couldn't defend yourself. So if you watch it on playback on YouTube, there'll be a moment where I'm just kind of
oh, perfect.
I'm talking trash, and you can't do anything about it because I was offline technically.
Okay, last question for me. Just got popped up by Rogue. Will I design a cross-stitch pattern for Hibana? 100%. I will get on that this week. And I'm actually totally serious. I do a lot of other things outside of board gaming, one of which is cross-stitch patterns and things. You can hit me up on the Discord and I will show that off. But yeah, I will totally do one for Hibana. That's a really cool idea. I like it.
I do too. I think that's cool. Sorry, I got something in my hair and it's driving me nuts. All right, some other questions here. 2 more questions from Rogue Knight and Discord. How do you determine how long a LionWing campaign goes for? What led to Picaresque having a 17-day campaign as opposed to a longer campaign where you might be able to attract more backers? So it's actually a 16-day campaign, not a 17-day. And we have 6 years of metrics now to show that you begin to have diminishing returns after 16 days, and that most campaigns that run for 16 days make as much, if not more, than campaigns that run for 30 plus days. The hardest part of any crowdfunding campaign is maintaining momentum, and it's really hard to maintain momentum for 30 days. I mean, hell, it's hard to maintain momentum for 16 days. And that's why, your first 48 hours, your last 72 hours are your biggest money-making days, and everything in between is typically pretty small. I'm talking not in relation to like the outliers of the group. I'm not talking about the Avatar TRPG. Right? I mean, they have a longer campaign and they're doing just fine, though I would actually argue, and the data would support my argument, that they would have made just as much money with a 16-day campaign as they will end up making with their long campaign. So for us, actually, it makes a lot more sense to do a 16-day campaign, not only because the data suggests that you should do a 16-day campaign, but because we would actually lose money on a longer campaign because we are advertising through social media, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, that kind of thing every day that we're live. So every day that we're live, I'm shelling out hundreds of dollars to market the game. Now, having to do that over the course of 30 days gets pretty expensive, whereas 16 days, not as expensive. So for us, a small publisher, we would actually probably lose money on a longer campaign. We did a long campaign. We did a 34, 36-day campaign for Sonoma Coliseum R. That was our first Kickstarter campaign. But as I've gone on the record to say, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing for that campaign. And so, of course, I did a 30-day plus campaign because I knew no better. And now I know better. And I will never do another 30-day campaign ever again. Ever again.
Just to throw in there, that's why as a small publisher, it's amazing when backers and when players retweet, when they post on social media. Bradley never does this enough, but we really do appreciate it. And even like liking the tweet, oh my goodness, the tweet is very good for our Twitter. Wow, that was very complex to say.
Your mouth broke. It's okay.
Yeah.
Happens to me all the time. Yeah, I mean, certainly word of mouth really helps campaigns like LionWings because we are a small publisher. We are an indie publisher for all intents and purposes. And so, yeah, we're marketing and we've got ads out, but nothing beats your own endorsement to your own followers, friends, family. Word of mouth is like still king or queen among marketing. You just can't beat it. You can't beat someone you trust telling you about a game they're excited about. I just think about my own life when my friends come to me and they're like, yo, check out this game. This is my experience with it. I'm like, you know what? Okay. You're really excited about it. I trust you. You're my friend. Let me check it out. Next thing I know, I'm backing it or I'm playing it. So word of mouth goes a long way for us. Lastly, from the Martyr, he says, not so much a question for LionWing Talks, but a general request. Back in the day, the LionWing Talks on YouTube had timestamps to the segments. That has since ended. Would it be possible to bring those back? And secondarily, for someone to put out some sort of meat and potatoes update in the Discord with the potential project updates for the week. Yeah, so to answer your questions in reverse order, I did that last week. So technically, this is a repeat of episode 29. If you were a LionWing faithful, and you were here last Wednesday for LionWing Talks, you saw the absolute worst LionWing Talks in the history of LionWing Talks. I was in the trenches with whatever sickness my kids brought home from daycare. I was a mess. There was snot running out of my nose on stream. I wish that were hyperbole, but that was a thing that actually happened on stream. I was losing my voice. I had like so much brain fog because I was sleep deprived because I was so congested at the time I couldn't sleep at night. It was such an embarrassing stream that normally, you know, I post these streams the day after on YouTube. I watched that thing back because I was like, you know what? I feel like I should probably really watch this one back. I made it I made it like 30 minutes in. I was like, this is horrible. Like, this is so embarrassing. I can't let any other humans see this than the few humans that saw it when we were alive. So consider yourself lucky, folks who joined me in chat last week for the stream, because no one will ever see that stream again other than you. So to answer your first question, or to answer your second question, I did this for last week's stream because I didn't post it. I did a recap in each of the project Discord channels, what I revealed that night about that project, where we were. Not like a full recap, but the highlights. And then I went through and I answered all the questions in written form in the LionWing Talks channel. Now, I will not be doing that, answering the questions in written form again, because that takes a while. But I certainly can and will be giving project updates in each game's Discord specific channel after LionWing Talks. And to answer your first question about timestamps, yeah, the truth is it takes too much time. I love timestamps, and it's something that I wanted to keep up with. And then, you know, it got to a point where I was like, I'm wasting time on timestamps when I could be wasting time on a project. And so I had to sort of make that decision of like, this is probably not the best use of my resources, and I'm not going to do it anymore. So I apologize. If someone wants to like timestamp it and send me those timestamps, okay, yeah, sure, I'll throw them in there. But I am unfortunately not going to go back through the video and do that. And I don't have enough discipline to be able to write down my transitions while I'm on the air. I have to know my limitations in life, and that is a limitation of mine. I will simply not do that, even though you might say, well, that's an easy fix to making sure you include the timestamps. So just write a little note at, 1 hour and 1 minute, you change to the topic of gun and gun. Yep, that makes sense. And I'm not going to do it. I apologize. So I think that takes us to the end. Let me check the chat one more time because I haven't looked at the chat here in a few minutes. What did I miss?
The secret LionWing stretch goal. Yeah, so I heard that if we retweet 10,000 times, Lydon finished the entire book. The entire book.
Oh my God, that's like the stuff my nightmares are made of. Even with 10,000 retweets, I wouldn't do that. If someone was like, I will give you an extra $10,000 if you just like make something about Picaresque Roman. Linen? I wouldn't do it. I shared on stream, it killed me to make those linen cards for Wild Hunt Festival. Killed me. I hated every minute of it.
Each page is sleeved.
I don't even know how that would happen, but
I
oh my
was about
god.
to say, what does that even mean?
You're just adding to my nightmare scenarios. This is not good at all. Sai
Cool.
says, we had the mythical 1 hour, 15-minute stream because nobody asked questions in chat out of pity. Yeah, I was able to get through things pretty quickly because I think everyone was like, please, like, just go to sleep. This is horrible to watch. All right. All right. So 1 hour and 9 minutes, pretty much exactly where I want to be. So this feels as good a spot as any. Thanks to everyone who joined us live. Thanks to everyone who's going to catch it on playback. If you haven't checked it out already, check out our latest Kickstarter project, Picaresque Roman, A Requiem for Rogues. It is the thing we talked about tonight. Hopefully you put 2 and 2 together. We smashed through our funding goal in 5 hours. We have broken through our first 2 stretch goals. We need to reveal our 3rd stretch goal, and I have a Kickstarter update to write. So I'm going to be doing that. If you missed WebDM's live stream of their actual play session last night, you can check that out on the campaign page. And also, Daisy from WebDM posted a review of her time with the game, and you should absolutely check that out because it is also featured on the campaign page now. It went up last night at about 11 p.m. I knew that was going to be sort of a late addition, but I'm going to include that video in tonight's update. So if you don't want to go scouring through the campaign page for that video, you can just wait for the update. Win, you've got some fans, you've got some folks thanking you for being on the stream. I have been wanting to bring on more co-hosts and guest hosts for this kind of thing. So this won't be the last time we do this kind of thing, because I bet we'll do this for Maiden Knight Saga.
Oh, well, we could have an entire episode on just the logo.
We could talk for 1 hour and 11 minutes on that logo. I mean, I wish I were kidding.
No, like actually.
Oh my gosh, it's nightmare fuel. It was so terrible.
Honestly, it's so great to always talk about this because I think a lot of this we just do and we don't think about what we're doing necessarily. And so to be able to come back on stream and talk about what we did and why we did things is always a great exercise. And I love talking about the projects with everyone. So if you guys have any more questions, I'm also on the Discord as Retainer Box or Win. I have my LionWing little tag, whatever. I don't know what things are called anymore. But yeah, I'll see everyone around. It was great being here.
Yeah, thanks, Win, for I just called you Win. I don't think I've actually ever called you Win.
No,
I don't call people by like nicknames or short names. It makes me feel weird because I'm like, I haven't earned the right to call them by that name, so I apologize. But you certainly do have your LionWing designation.
Yes.
In the chat, so that's good. I see Noelle say, I got a mic and I'm practicing Bradly. I'm working on it. Hey, whenever, no rush. If ever, if you still decide like, hey, you don't want to be on stream, that's cool, Noelle, no problem.
Noelle, I never practice. I just do it on stream and pray that Bradley will like edit out the bad parts.
No, I don't edit. I do not edit. Let me watch any of these videos. I don't edit anything. That takes time, and I'm not willing to dedicate that. So Sai, it's so funny you brought up postmortems. Yes, so I have been wanting to do a postmortem on Sonoma Coliseum for quite a while. And I think that's something that I will be doing on various projects because there's some stuff with Wild Hunt Festival that I think I could talk about in a postmortem forum that would be pretty cool and illuminating on why certain decisions were made and why certain decisions weren't made and that kind of thing. So that is definitely something that I have a lot of interest in. That would be fun. So, that takes us to the end tonight. Thank you, everyone, for spending your time with us. Much appreciated. Go check out the campaign for Picaresque Roman. Share it with your friends, with your family, with your social circles, on your social, whatever the case may be. The more we can get the name out there, the better. This is a niche product. TRPGs are already niche, and this is like a niche of a niche. And so we could certainly use and would absolutely appreciate all the love we can get. And thanks for listening to us talk about what it was like to localize Picaresque Roman for the West. I'll be back next week with a standard episode of LionWing Talks. I think I'm going to be in a new place. I want to have a background. I don't know how that's going to work out. Don't hold me to that. I might skip next week, which will be the first week that I've skipped since the first week of February. That would feel weird. I'm trying to keep this train going. But still, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.